The memory of Robert Burns has been proudly and fondly proclaimed at suppers on his birthday for the past 250 years. In fact, this is the 251st. Last weekend, Lila Beth and I attended a Burns supper in Toronto.
Ooh.
There were over 300 in that city on Saturday night celebrating Robert Burns. So now we have one, thanks to Tony Lipnicki especially, and all the other folks like Joanne and Steve and everybody who put this thing together. You've done a marvelous piece of work, I think. And now we have one in Allegheny County, New York.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll continue it. It's a great honor for our community. Robert Burns is the only poet honored in this way. Even Shakespeare does not get this annual attention. We remember Burns, of course, for his creative genius. In his short life, he produced poems now universally admired, published a book of poetry in the Scots dialect, thus preserving an ancient tongue, revised and wrote over 300 Scots songs, some of which we're singing tonight, including what has become the world anthem, Auld Lang Syne. Wrote over 700 letters in superb standard English, including some of the most beautiful love letters ever written. And he died too soon, much too soon. He knew that himself. He was 37. He told his wife at the end, "Jeannie, don't be afraid. I'll be more respected 100 years after I'm dead than I am now." Does it not make us all wonder how a peasant farmer, poor all his life, in the harsh environment of Ayrshire, Scotland, could leave us such a magnificent body of literary works that continue to inspire people of every culture? What explains Robert Burns? In this particular memory, let's look a little more closely at Burns' Scottish roots. That will explain why, by the time he was 16, he had read his way through much of classical literature, Shakespeare, Alexander Pope, John Locke, and the Scottish poets who had preceded him, all with not much more than a year of formal schooling. Yes, he was naturally bright, and he was a dedicated scholar, but that does not quite explain it. The first key to understanding his growth and development is that he had been taught at an early age to read. Indeed, as with all boys of his age in Scotland, unlike in other lands, it was demanded of him by the church established during the Scottish Reformation, the forerunner of Presbyterianism, led by the great religious radical John Knox, a preacher of truly terrifying power who insisted that all boys and girls must be taught to read Holy Scripture and his book of discipline. It was the key to integrating and sustaining the Scottish Reformation. As a result, Scotland's literacy rate by the end of the 18th century would be the highest in all of Europe. Astonishing. In Burns' time, Scotland was one of the poorest of countries, with a population of about 2 million people. Yet the value placed on basic reading and writing for religious reasons turned it into a remarkably literate culture, all traceable to the Reformation warrior John Knox. But what old John Knox did not foresee is that once an individual is taught to read, his mind is freed, and he may begin to make his own decisions about what to read and write and think. We have all heard the expression, free to think for ourselves. That is a democratic expression with origins in Scotland. And Burns pushed it to the limit, sometimes beyond the limit, which would land him in trouble with the kirk or the court. Burns was always a beacon of controversy. As the saying goes, he was far ahead of his time. Among his immortal poems, "A Man's a Man" is one of the most powerful statements ever written on the fundamental dignity and integrity of all men everywhere.